Okay, good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Finance for Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. The purpose of this meeting is, as we do each year, which is to formally receive the budgets for the Board of Selectmen and Board of Education. And so tonight joining us will be First Selectman J.B. Stevenson and then Duke Deneen, who's Chairman of the Board of Education. What we'll do, though, to start, as we've tried to do with our recent meetings, is to open the floor up for public comment in case anyone has anything they'd like to add to the proceedings before we actually hear the what should be fairly short and high-level comments from both Jamie and Duke regarding the Board of Selectmen and Board of Education budgets. So I think we'll start with public comment, as I said. Jim, what do we need to do to...
Hey, John. Yeah, thanks. If anybody's on and you'd like to make a public comment, just press the raise hand icon on the bottom of your screen. John, doesn't look like we have any comments, but Dr. Adley and Jamie are both trying to join in now, so let's give them a minute.
Okay, I see Rich is on. Jamie's on. I don't see Duke or Alan yet. Looks like Alan's in the waiting room though, Jim. There's Dr. Adley and Duke. Terrific. Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started. There's no public comment. Maybe Duke and Dr. Adley, if you all would like to make some brief comments on your budget for our board, that would be terrific.
Okay.
I think you're on. There you go.
Are we unmuted? Okay. I don't know if you can see, we have a deck that I will go through quickly in the interest of everyone's time.
I don't know if Jan is facilitating me. Can someone just give me rights to, or maybe I already have them?
Oh, to share your screen, Jim, can you do that?
Yeah, Dr. Adley, hold on one second here. Okay, Dr. Adley, you should be able to share your screen.
Thank you, James.
Thanks, Jim. I feel the only thing missing in Zoom is a ceremonial handoff of the book.
It is. It doesn't seem very ceremonial now at all, but
right. Although we need to go more electronic and less big books. So good evening, everyone. Thank you, and to the Board of Finance, thank you for continuing to work with the Board of Ed through this budget cycle. We again appreciate the support over this challenging year and for the smooth process of working with the Board of Ed through the COVID expense appropriation process. So thank you again for that. So we've gone through our process and we now have a Board of Education budget. So I'll quickly go through some of these slides. Board of Education goals, to continue to support the learning during the pandemic and the health crisis. The good news here is as of yesterday, we are back in school, all grades as of yesterday. And just a big thank you to everyone out there listening for the hard work and the commitment of the administration, the staff, parents, community, yes, our wonderful students, and for a lot of patience. Let's all stay safe and continue with everyone being back at school. So it's an exciting phase for everything that we've been through. Complete the strategic planning process. We had a meeting last week. We're very excited to continue to move the strategic planning process forward, and we'll be hearing and seeing more about that in the coming weeks. Continue to advance the district's facilities projects. We're excited over the last couple of weeks to roll out a plan for Hindley Homes and Royal around the removing the portables library redesign, and working on educational space in those schools. So we're excited for that project to move forward. And as everyone knows, we've got a beautiful hole in the ground, a lot of mud, and a big mountain, and the Ox Ridge School continues to move forward. We reviewed bus transportation this past year, more work to be done on that in the upcoming year, and we continue to advance teaching and learning. Some of the highlights in the budget coming up. We continue to focus on class sizes, and they are continue to be protected and in line in this fiscal year 22 budget. STEM classes at the high school. We're excited to continue to expand and extend opportunity for our high school students. This has been part of the strategic plan and also part of the superintendent's reentry plan. We're going to continue to build and support as we go into the new year, social emotional learning. This is key, continuing to build on the educational model to promote the development of these ruler skills, which is recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing, and regulating. This will become even more important as we go into the new school year and finish out this year. Dr. Adley has presented and the board has supported the change in the structure in special education and the SIS facilitators going to assistant principals. The one-to-one digital computing devices for students, K through 2, 5, and 9. Our investment in technology has proven itself over this past year especially. We've been a leading district in being able to pivot between learning models. We continue to upgrade network and wireless technology and infrastructure for our students. We're excited for the teacher in residence program, and we maintained a bus on the Renshaw Road and Fitch Avenue based on all the construction and the safety over there. Next page, real quickly, kind of gives an overview of our Durgay budget requests, kind of the superintendent's budget, and so far where they've landed in terms of a Board of Ed approved budget. As you can see, there's a high of 639 in Easton, a low of 345 in Ridgefield, and you can see where some of the Board of Ed approved budgets have landed. Some have not come in yet, and Wilton is utilizing the governor's executive order to delay a budget. The next slide shows per pupil expenditures. Darien lands about $21,444. This slide, if you go over to the other column where there's some red and black, just shows with our existing enrollment what the cost to taxpayers would be in those other districts that have a higher per pupil expenditure. K through 12 enrollment just kind of shows our current enrollment, about 4,584, about a 20 pupil increase going into next year is what we're seeing right now. But overall, the trend's somewhat stable over the next decade. As I said, Darien has prided itself and continues to focus on class sizes. This budget protects those class sizes. You can see here kind of an overview of enrollment through the elementary schools. We have 2,060 kids in our elementary schools. We have 106 sections forecasted. We have about 103 right now. And it goes over kind of the average class size through those elementary schools. So the proposed fiscal year 22 budget. Last year's budget was $102,496,378. The superintendent's budget came in at $106,587,389, a 3.99% increase. Through the work of the board, we have additions of about $36,810. The Board of Ed approved budget that we are sending to the board finance comes in at $106,624,199, a little over 4% increase, 4.03. Board of Ed changes to the superintendent budget. A lot of conversation around some of the items in here. Good, solid conversation and thought process about the restoration of the team teaching at Darien High School. We felt it's an important mechanism up there for the students, and finishing this year and going into next year, we thought it'd be important to continue to support that model. We feel with the work the facilities team has done on Ox Ridge and the other buildings, we can forego this year kind of a full building condition survey with the work that's already being done on the elementary schools for the next phase of our facilities project. We did some reduction in iPads based on looking at the numbers. We also have gone back to doing a demography enrollment report. We're pushing that out. Traditionally, we've done that every other year, so we feel we can push that out. The district has done a great job of forecasting enrollment and looking at the numbers. We felt it's important. We're excited by the teacher in residence program. We actually added a second teacher. We feel that program, based on learning more about it, we'd be excited to have 2 teachers as part of that program in our district. On occupational therapy and physical therapy, we kind of tried to align with last year's budget. We looked at the run rates there and thought it would be prudent to kind of bring them up to where they are from a run rate standpoint. If you look at the fiscal budget, if you look at the budget summary, contractual wages, insurance, enrollment increases, special ed contractual, other non-personal contractual increases come in at about 3.36%. COVID carryover. These are items that will stay in the budget on a go-forward basis. These are items like Zoom and other technology investments that we had to make that are now kind of part of the budget on a go-forward basis. Budget control, currently there's 4 FTEs in there. The forecast looks like there might be a break with 3 additional sections needed. Operating and equipment adjustments, budget again, $106,624,199, 4.03%. This kind of gives you a quick snapshot on the personnel enrollment, increases and decreases. Some highlights up at the high school has to do with some of the exciting STEM offerings that we're doing. And there are 60 more students up at the high school. So in addition there, again, the potential break at the elementary schools, kind of a swap out of assessed facilitators to the assistant principals. Also some staffing changes with Darien and Middlesex Library paraprofessionals. The key driver down the bottom here is the switch out of the elementary paraprofessionals to part-time lunch monitors, change out in the technology in the copy center, the teacher in residence program, and a change in hours on the paraprofessionals and transportation drivers. So overall, a total FTE change of plus 4.92 FTE for next year. The next gives a quick summary of kind of the cost associated with what I think is one of the big drivers in the budget this year, and I think it's an exciting opportunity in the district. The SES assistant principals, the current facilitator budget is $537,819. Taking them up to principals takes it up to $710. So an overall increase of $146,586,000. This was a concept presented by the administration and a lot of conversation and talk amongst the board, amongst the public, and amongst a lot of the partners and support groups that work with the district. So this is an exciting opportunity to move that side forward. COVID considerations. As you know, we did not budget for an extension of COVID-19 in the upcoming school year. Overall, we have the tracking in place. We went through the appropriation process, but the administration did a lot of good work of looking at what we would potentially need in a 45-day opening in the fall, and kind of outline some of that here on this slide, coming in at about $825,000. Again, overall, I think the process worked from an appropriation standpoint. Rich Rudell and the finance team have done an incredible job tracking the COVID RC. A lot continues to change on a daily basis with vaccines. We're excited this week to roll out vaccinations for our staff and our teachers. So hopefully by the new school year, we're getting to a better place. But we know in working with the Board of Finance, we have a continued commitment to work together to understand what these costs are to get the schools open in the new year. Capital improvements, priority 1 projects, just at a high level. Some work at the high school around carpet, gym, and some tech ed equipment. Again, library carpet and conditioning and some paving at Middlesex, some curbing and sidewalk and paving and clock system at Hindley, developing specs for an HVAC system and some emergency lighting at Homes, a new roof at Royal, emergency lighting and clock system, some blacktop at Tokenique, and some blacktop security and a vehicle at the district. So capital improvement priority 1 projects coming in at $2,312,921. So I'll pause there. Again, thank you very much. We look forward to working with you over the next month on the budget process. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Duke. I really appreciate that. That's a terrific summary. I know we'll have probably more detailed questions later on, but does anyone on the Board of Finance have any quick questions or comments they wanted to make? Okay, go ahead.
Dan,
Dan, sure.
I've got one question.
Go.
Is the $825,000 needed to extend COVID for 45 days? Is that the 45 days is from opening of schools to plus 45, or what is the measurement period that 45 days would apply to?
Yeah, Dan, it's basically through the first period of the holiday, through sort of November, Thanksgiving period.
Thank you.
Terrific. Other questions?
I've got a question. That's the federal stimulus package. Do you guys have any kind of insight on how that affects the Darien school budget?
We have the current proposal that's working its way through Congress and the Senate right now. We have no idea. As we went through the appropriation process and we had come up with our number of about 2.3 million, we had gotten confirmation of the second ESSER grant that came in at about $596,000. And that we took off the top of the original appropriation request, which brought us down to about $1.7 million. So Frank, we'll continue to monitor that closely and work with the Board of Finance to see where those dollars land at the state level, because it'll be important as we go through the budget process.
Right. Yeah, I think it's obviously early right now, but by the time this goes to the RTM, it may not be so early. So
yeah, we might have more insight, definitely, I would say within the next couple of weeks, and definitely by then. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
$1.9 trillion is a lot of money. I can't imagine that some of it will come our way, so we'll see. Great. Other questions for the Board of Ed team? Okay, again, I appreciate that, and also appreciate your comments about the collaboration that we've had on trying to meet your requirements for COVID-related expenditures, as you said, and I'll reiterate that process remains open and active. So be sure to come to us when these expenditures come into better focus as we move through the rest of this year and into the summer. In any case, I'm sure that come what may, we'll make sure you guys are ready and that you've got the resources you need to protect students, staff, and parents. So thank you.
Thank you, John.
Okay, if nothing else, then let me hand it over to Mrs. Stevenson for.
John, I think Taylor had her hand up. I think she had a quick question.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see it. Taylor, please go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was looking for the button. And I apologize if I've forgotten this, but did you guys add in any anticipated funds for service provision for mental health or anything like that? Or is this all known cases going in?
There's a slight amount of money in there for potential services that we need to provide.
And that was also, Taylor, kind of flattening and going up with the run rate on occupational therapy and the other line item too. And then there is some overall dollars built in there, but we'll have to continue to monitor that too. It's a good question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, may I just say that I just want to recognize the work of the board and the staff in particular, and actually the community. I just want to mention that I think we get a tremendous return on investment of education in this time. not only even from the kids' performances, but also in this year in terms of the actual amount of education that they're actually receiving and the quality of that education. It just seems, I just make a note that what seems obvious are there are big drivers that are occurring, and in order to continue to move forward, which I do believe incrementally we need to continue to move forward, we have had to make, and at least through my recommendation, had to make some offsets in staffing, and that just seems to be something that in order to continue to sort of incrementally move forward, that it's part of the narrative at the moment, and again, that is part of the narrative of this particular year. So with that, I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. I would echo that. It takes a village, and everybody in this village is doing their part, which is great. So, okay. If no other questions for the Board of Education team, let me turn this over to Jamie Stevenson. Jamie, thanks for being here.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I'm very happy to be here tonight on behalf of my board to deliver to you our proposed Board of Selectmen budget. I have a narrative for you tonight, so no charts and slides, so sit back and I'll just take a couple minutes of your time. First, I want to thank my Board of Selectmen colleagues for, again, another really collaborative process. Everybody was very united in our decision-making this year on the Board of Selectmen budget. I also want to thank the members of the Board of Finance and the Finance and Budget Committee who have been with us from the beginning of our deliberations. And of course, to Jen and Kate and all of our terrific department heads who were able to deliver really thoughtful budgets in the midst of responding to a pandemic. No easy task. I know the same of the staff at the Board of Education. So my hat's off to all of our town employees. For the folks watching from home, you can follow along with my presentation in the executive summary that's posted on the Town of Darien website under the Open Darien tile on the home page. And I recommend that anybody who wants to follow the budget visit that page, and you can find details of this budget and also of historic budgets. This year we had a full implementation of the OpenGov budgeting software, and we used it for our deliberations. So for those of us who love our books and our papers, we had some initial anxiety about the process, but it was fantastic in the end. We had at our fingertips all of the current and historic budget detail, which allowed us to move efficiently and thoroughly through our budget reviews. I have to give a special shout out to Jen Charneski for being our OpenGov guru. And perhaps the Board of Finance will use this tool this year in your deliberations. Each year we begin our budget process by acknowledging that our budget represents more than a spending plan. It represents a set of values, goals, and objectives for local government service delivery. While encumbered with many contractual obligations that limit our ability to make substantive adjustments, Board of Selectmen budgets are consistently lean. Actual budget cuts, not reductions and increases, require policy decisions to eliminate services that our residents have come to rely upon. Last year, we asked you to support a 0% budget increase. And that was a very important goal to achieve. I'm not sure any of us could have known what was going to come our way since last March, but I think because of that fiscal discipline last year, we were really able to respond with dexterity to the needs of the town this year. So I very much want to thank you for that. This year, however, there was no appetite by my board to eliminate any town services, particularly in the wake of the pandemic. So on behalf of my board, I present to you tonight a proposed Board of Selectmen budget of $49,772,218, which is a $4.7 million increase over the fiscal 21 budget. The greatest impacts of our budget this year are in capital, debt service, and some new operating initiatives. And I'm going to spend a few minutes just to run through a summary of some of the more notable points in the budget. In terms of capital requests, we're asking for $2.16 million over last year's request. Some of the larger expenditures we're asking you to contemplate are again, $1.2 million in annual paving, $750,000 in sidewalk replacement, some rehab work here at Town Hall, gymnasium windows, ADA compliant doors, pavement rehab for $190,000, a traffic preemption system for our fire and EMS providers. This is the system that when an emergency vehicle is approaching a traffic signal, it turns the signal red for all other travelers except for that emergency vehicle. New replacement cherry lawn tennis courts at $250,000, dredging the Tilly Pond Small Pond for $82,000 and widening the walking path in Tilly, and $75,000 for some modest terrain improvements at the property at 30 Edgerton. I'm happy tonight to offer to the Board of Finance to take a cut of $120,000 that was proposed for the police department computer server system. Thanks to Jeff Adams and his team, he was able to get a much better price and is now able to utilize the IT reserve for that expenditure. So you can take that cut at your level. You'll also note in our budget proposal that we have again eliminated the fire apparatus replacement reserve amount this year. And we're going to encourage the Board of Finance to bond or pay for from the general fund reserve for fire trucks in the year in which they're purchased. $1 million reserves are putting unnecessary stress on our budget and are negatively impacting the mill rate when we believe there are other strategies for funding of expensive equipment like that that exist. There is a $1.2 million increase to town and school debt service. You might recall that fiscal 21 debt service was lower due to an early bond redemption. This budget includes planned bonding for fall of 2021 for some of the Ox Ridge project and some other capital expenditures. In the general operating budget, we're asking for an increase of $827,000. A large portion of that budget is attributed to the full implementation, the third tranche of the civilian dispatch for the Darien Police Department for the overnight shift of $160,000. That actually represents half a year expenditure. The total annual expenditure of that third shift of civilian dispatchers is $320,000, but we realize that we probably need some time after the budget is approved to do interviews and whatnot. So we're hoping to have the civilians in place for the second half of the fiscal year. There's $26,000 requested to respond to the new police accountability legislation and $32,000 for promotional testing that's necessary in the police department due to retirements. In our Parks and Rec department, as I mentioned, we're asking for money for the cherry lawn tennis courts. We're also asking in the operating budget for $32,000 to continue the park monitor that we brought on board last summer to help us manage in our COVID environment. We found that to be tremendously successful and we'd like to continue it for another year. We're also asking to put $15,000 regrettably back in the budget to handle geese control. Thanks to Pam, she's tried everything, alternate methods to get the geese out of our parks, but nothing really works quite as well as the dogs, and the dogs are costly. So we're asking for $15,000 this year. We're asking for $45,000 to do a review of our emergency services in an endeavor to make sure that we're delivering a best management practice emergency service system. $28,000 for a part-time public information officer. And there's a $30,000 increase to the Stamford EMS contract. We have continued support for our 3 hardworking volunteer fire departments. Happy to report a 0% increase in our healthcare renewal. And non-tax revenues are down in our licensing permits and in our youth programs. Additionally, we need another $266,000 to fund our pension and OPEB contributions. And there is a modest $106,000 increase requested in the Darien Library grant. As you know, our sewer and parking funds are self-sustaining, but there is a 4% increase in the sewer fund that is attributed to the contract for the Stanford WPCA. And there's a reduction in our parking expenses of $273,000 due to COVID. Government services are a people-intensive business. 16 million of the Board of Selectmen budget is attributed to personnel-related costs. In percentage terms, if you look at the Board of Selectmen budget, net of capital, debt service, and the library grant, 50.5% of our budget relates to the investment in the professionals who deliver town services. This proposed budget contemplates an increase of 3.9 FTE equivalents, including the mid-year implementation of the 3 civilian dispatchers on the midnight shift, a part-time PIO, 0.2 FTEs of a sanitarian, and a mid-year shift from a part-time to a full-time building inspector, which is also 0.2 FTEs. Embedded in our budget throughout various budget categories is a very modest $11,050 of net COVID expenditures. We assumed that everyone who wants a vaccine should have the opportunity to receive one by the end of the first quarter. Based on the good news from President Biden and Governor Lamont today on increased supply, that may be achieved much sooner than anticipated. Should the Board of Finance decide to fund fiscal 22 COVID expenses in an alternate way, you're free to take that cut with the promise that you'll approve funding for any necessary COVID expenditures in the future. One final thought to share this evening is our great desire to continue the successful collaborations with the Board of Education and district staff. Dr. Adley, Chairman Deneen, school staff, with special gratitude to our school nurses, and the board have been great partners to the town during COVID. Let's leverage that positive collaboration as we think forward about things like walking student safety, police services that support the school system, renovations to Hinley Homes and Royal School, townwide technology, and communications. The Board of Education is currently undertaking a strategic plan for the district. I can see great value one day in the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Education, and the Board of Finance working together on a holistic strategic plan for our community. Well, at least there's some food for thought. Thank you very much for your consideration for the Board of Selectmen's fiscal 22 budget request. We know you're going to dig deep into the details, but we hope in the end that you'll support our budget as presented this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie, for that presentation. Much appreciated. Any comments from my colleagues on the Board of Finance or quick questions for Jamie? Okay, terrific. I would just echo what you said, Jamie. I think the collaboration has worked well for many years, and we certainly want to continue that as part of the budget process this year. One thing that we have finalized for the Board of Finance are what we call budget assignments. So we have this every year where members of the Board of Finance will team up and pair up to review and examine specific areas of both budgets. In addition, what we want to do is make sure that those pairings that we collaborate with our colleagues in the RTM, particularly F&B, but maybe some of the other groups as well, to make sure that they have a chance to pair off with us or use the buddy system as we have described it in the past. The purpose of that is that as the Board of Finance goes through its review, members of the RTM can participate or be privy to all those discussions and questions and answers, with the view being that by kind of doing it in parallel, it saves a lot of time. It helps inform the RTM process early on. And then when we vote to set the mill rate in April and hand the budget off to the RTM for a final appropriation, that process is just a lot quicker and smoother because they have participated in our process beforehand. It also minimizes the strain on town and Board of Education staff because hopefully they'll only have to answer questions once instead of having a more redundant process like we've had in the past. So absolutely, Jamie, we'll be sure to continue that process this year, and I look forward to it. Are there any other questions or comments this evening? That was, I think, everything on our agenda. Okay. The next session is, Jim, do you have our calendar in front of us? The Board of Education or the schools tour is coming up a week from Saturday. And what else do we have? We have the statutory meeting next Tuesday, correct?
Right, next Tuesday evening, you have the public hearing.
Okay, so as a reminder to everyone, that is also a regular annual meeting. This is a hearing instead of a meeting. And what we'll do at that session is to provide an opportunity for the public to offer comments on either the Board of Education or Board of Selectmen budgets. Historically, we've had that in the Town Hall auditorium where folks could come up to a microphone and either read statements or make general comments on either budget. This year, we're going to do that virtually, and we think it will work just fine. If you look at RTM meetings, they're able to manage pretty big sessions with that group. So we think this time it will be just as effective to hold this hearing via Zoom. So the way the process will work is that we'll publicize a link for that meeting, and anyone who wants to register to make comments, why we certainly will accommodate that. And we look forward to hearing everyone's thoughts on the budget as we start the Board of Finance review process. So more to come on that, but definitely mark your calendars for next Tuesday, the 9th. I think that's all for this evening. Unless anyone has anything else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
And John, I would just recommend just point out to those members of the public that do want to speak, just because we generally have a bunch of them at the public hearing, to maybe send you an email or send Jen an email ahead of time, just so we can create a list of those to go through.
Yeah, every year I like to mispronounce everyone's names, and selfishly it would be a real sad thing if I missed doing that this year. So, okay, but thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. Other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn? Okay, Rob, second, Jim, all in favor? Terrific. Thanks, everyone. We stand adjourned. Take care.